Now, the graph for monopoly is the most tested thing on any free response on the AP test. In the last 10 years, they do this approximately 60% of the time. You've got to know this graph. There's two ways they ask you about it. One, they give you the graph and you have to figure out where different things are. And the other times they ask you to draw it yourself. On this question, the first response from 2012, they asked you to draw the graph. Now, they'll always tell you if they're making a profit or if they're making a loss. In this situation, they're telling you that it's a monopoly, but it's currently making a loss. And so to draw it, you draw quantity and price, a downward sloping demand curve, a downward sloping marginal revenue curve, marginal cost that goes down and up. Now, before we draw ATC, let's figure out the price and quantity. All firms produce where MR equals MC. That's the quantity for a monopoly, QM. And they're going to price up to the demand curve and over, so that's the price for a monopoly. Now, since this firm is making a loss, ATC is not going to be down here. It's got to be up here. Go down, hits a minimum, goes back up, ATC. Next, the question asks you to shade it in the area of economic loss. Well, at this quantity, there's the price. The average total cost is above it. And so if that's the average total cost, there's the price. This box represents the area of loss. The last thing question A asks you to do is identify the quantity that is allocatively efficient or socially optimal. Right? Socially optimal is the idea that where society actually wants. Society wants where the marginal cost hits the demand. So down here, this quantity E is the quantity that is efficient or allocatively efficient. Think of it this way. If the monopoly was producing this quantity, there'd be no deadweight loss. Now add that all up, we're already at 5 points out of 10. Now let's move on to B. The question said, assume the monopoly increases the price above PM, what's going to happen to total revenue? Will it increase or decrease or stay the same? The answer is it's going to decrease. But since this is an explain question, you explain why. The reason why is because the demand is elastic. The MR is still positive, and if the MR is positive, the demand is elastic. When the price goes up and demand's elastic, the total revenue is going to go down. In letters C and D, they're asking you the difference between per unit and lump sum. Now, they've done this a lot in the last 5 or 6 years, making sure you know the difference. You've got to know this. A per unit subsidy is the government gives this monopoly money, but for each unit they produce. So they produce another unit, they get them another subsidy. Another unit, they produce another subsidy. What that would do is that would decrease the marginal cost. A per unit subsidy will lower the marginal cost like this, because now this firm has a lower additional cost per unit because they're getting a subsidy for each one of those units. And they'll produce where MR equals MC, which is the new quantity right here, and the new price, which is right there. So the answer to the question is quantity would increase, but since the price also fell, consumer surplus would also increase. CI is one of those explain questions, so to get the point, you got to say because and explain why quantity will increase. It's because the marginal cost will decrease. Now, what about a lump sum subsidy? A lump sum subsidy is a one-time payment to a company, one time, not for each unit they produce. And so that will not change the marginal cost. Marginal cost wouldn't fall. The quantity and price would stay exactly the same as they were before. So lump sum does not cause marginal cost to fall. So deadweight loss will stay exactly the same. Now, this is an explain question, so you got to say because marginal cost will stay the same and quantity will stay the same. But if they do give a lump sum subsidy, something in this graph is going to change. The ATC. The ATC is going to fall when the government gives this company some money. So when that happens, what happens to the area of loss? Well, the loss is going to decrease. Now, since we don't know the amount of the subsidy, we don't know if it's actually going to end up being profit, if ATC falls down here, or if ATC is going to be up here. But either way, we know that the loss that would have existed before the subsidy is definitely going to get smaller. That's it. That's a monopoly graph out of 10 points. 5 for the graph, including the loss and the quantities allocatively efficient. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Add them up, see how you did, and try the next free response.